Welcome to another episode of Highlights from the Hill. I'm Jim Cousins, your co-host, along with our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Carol Kavanaugh, who bring you all kinds of topics and interesting conversation from the Hopkins Public School systems. I'm going to dive into it right now. Welcome.
Thank you, Jim. It's good to be here today. So today I have brought with me our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction, Jeff Lebrad, and we thought we could talk all things teaching and learning.
That will be great.
Sure.
That will be great.
So before we start that, Jeff is relatively new to us. He's in his second year in the central office. And so tell us a little bit about your journey to the central office.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me here today, and I love the chance to be able to talk teaching and learning. As I am well into my second year, I'm finding that I'm even more eager to talk all things Hopkinton Public Schools, which I know we'll talk a lot about today. So prior to the Hopkinton Public Schools, I started my career as a substitute teacher. And I have said to people before that I think that that is a role that everyone should engage in for at least a little while, because there is no job like it, especially if you are the 20-year-old kid who's going in and covering and dressing something like this and being told that today you're going to be the PE teacher out on the field playing kickball and you have no change of clothes. So it stands out to me as an experience. But I went on from there. I taught 4th and 5th grade in the Lincoln Public Schools and then in the Brookline Public Schools. From there, I began my administrative journey as an assistant principal in Lexington. I moved on to the role of principal at the same school in Lexington, and then tried my hand as a principal in the Sudbury Public Schools. And then it was from there that the opportunity here in Hopkinton presented itself, and that is what brings me to this point.
So this is your first foray into a central office position. Prior to this, you had always been a building-based person. So what do you sort of see as the differences between living in a building and then moving into central office?
Sure. I would say that anyone who is working in a school is never prepared for the transition outside of a school. There's something about the rapid pace, the lack of predictability, the need to respond in an instant to students' needs, teachers' needs, parents' needs, and sometimes the needs of the central office. What I have found in my current role, the time is available for deep thought. There is time to think through lofty ideas, meaty goals, and thinking about how to operationalize them. There are always going to be the unexpected elements of the day that we have coming into our office all the time in schools, but we don't have as many of those consistent things that that we need to respond to. I know that when I was an assistant principal and a principal, I could come up with my list of things for the day that I thought I would accomplish, knowing that I wasn't really going to be able to move much of them on a given day. I find now in my work, I'm able to plan a little bit more methodically so that those big efforts, those big initiatives that we need to move forward in the district, I'm able to focus on. And that's been a pretty big shift for me. To allow myself to settle into some of that deep thought and deep work so that we can do what we need to do as a central office, which is supporting our people in our schools every day.
I know that when I made that transition, one of the things I think I missed so profoundly was having people around me all day. You know, you'd have 1,200 kids, and you'd have 100 faculty, and you would have administrator colleagues, and your front office secretarial staff, and we were just, it's strange to say, but you become sort of one big family.
Yes.
And then when you move into a central office role, that whole group of people that you had been your family for a very, very long time, they're kind of gone. And I mean, you adopt a new set of people in central office, but it's a very small group of people. I don't know if you felt that same sort of loss.
Yeah, I would say that it was, I don't know if I'd label it a loss, but it certainly was a change of context. And I think that that's why when I did move into the role of a central office administrator, it was so important to me to make sure that I prioritized being in the schools. And I know, Carol, that's a priority for you as well. You're in the buildings almost every day. And that's a big push and a big priority for me too. For our people to know that we're not sitting across the street in an office making decisions, but rather walking with and learning with our students, our teachers, our administrators, knowing what their needs are, what their desires are, what is exciting, what we should be celebrating. When we do that, we kind of fill the void that doesn't necessarily happen because the offices that empty into a hallway in our building are a little bit different than when you and I were school-based administrators.
Yes. I remember my predecessor once saying to me that we really work in service of the schools.
Yes.
In service of the administrators, in service of the kids, and I think that's one of those things that was really profound.
Yeah.
And I liked hearing that. So talk about the work a little bit.
Sure.
So here you are in the central office, and really, you've hit the ground running last year, but like now you're very deeply entrenched in the work, I think. So tell us a little bit about the work.
Sure.
What do you got going on?
Oh man, what don't we have going on right now, Dr. Kavanaugh? And I think that's one of the things that that in both my department, but also in school districts, we sometimes have to stop ourselves because we can do so much. There's always, if we're looking out, we're always seeing things that can be improved. We can see areas where we can grow. There's always great opportunity there. So our job is to think about, what is it that is, one, going to have the most monumental impact on our students, and then also what is it that we can accomplish, because there are some lofty goals and ideas that we would love to see happen, but we might not be able to actualize them. And at the same time, there are things that we really need to get going right now. Sometimes those are things that we are deciding to do because we look out at our students and we see there's a need there. Other times we might have a mandate coming from the state or federal government that says this is something that you need to prioritize and do. So right now we are working on quite a bit of both sustaining and new. So when it comes to sustaining, I think about our work in literacy and math. I think about our early literacy work where we are leveraging the work of phonics and phonemic awareness, word study, making sure that our students are working in rich texts, that they're learning to decode words in what we call decodable texts, and making sure that students have access to that guaranteed and viable experience. In math, we continue to think about not just what it means for a student to be someone who can compute. When we were in school, making sure that you had those multiplication tables down was really considered the highest level of math that you needed at a certain level. And now we think differently. I've said this before, but how many times did a teacher tell us in math class, well, you need to learn that because it's not like you'll be walking around every day with a calculator in your pocket. And of course, that is the world in which we live now, absolutely. So now we're pushing our students to be thinkers. We're pushing our students to be communicators of ideas, to be debaters of concepts and provers of the truths that they believe to be true in math. This year, we're fully launching a curriculum called Number Corner, which is a component of our elementary math program in K1 and 2. And what that program is allowing us to do is carve out some time in each one of our elementary classrooms at those levels. And we're allowing our students to have time to think deeply about patterns, to communicate about what they're seeing, what they're thinking, and engaging what we call mathematical discourse. They're talking through what is it that they think they see, what is it that they are predicting, and what we're seeing are great results from our students. We're seeing that they are able to communicate their thinking in a way that is essential to what it means to be a 21st century learner and what it means to be ready for the world and future ahead. And we know that a big part of that is going to be the communication of ideas and not just necessarily the rote memorization and recitation of those.
So it's really interesting, just taking that as an example, right? What is your role in a program like that? Because obviously you're not in the classroom teaching these things and carving out that time from the day, right? And I know, so I know that you're involved in it. Like, how does that come about? Is that teacher driven? Are you finding things that you're bringing in? What's the process?
I think it's a little bit of all of those things, and I think that's where we know, when we know we're going to develop the richest curriculum, if we are open to all those different points of entry. Sometimes it might be something that Carol or I come across at a conference, and we might say, this might have legs in our community. We should take a look at this. We should explore it. Other times teachers will come to maybe their curriculum leaders or their building leaders and say, I've heard this thing, or my students need this thing. I've done a little research. Could we explore A, B, or C. You know, I take Number Corner, for instance. Number Corner was a curriculum that I had used in a previous district. And when I came to Hopkinton, our elementary director of mathematics had also had experience with that program. And so we kind of found each other and said, yes, we both have had a positive experience with this. Now let's have a conversation with our teacher leaders to figure out if this is something that might be of interest and of value. You know, but there are other elements too that we might look at. There are other things that we might consider with our curriculum and where we get it from, so to speak. Yeah.
So sometimes teachers are coming across something. Sometimes you've had experience, or you find something in your research, and then how does it actually get instituted?
Like, how do we go?
Yeah.
There is no rule book. I think that's an important thing to say. But one of the things that is important for me, I always put myself in my shoes as a teacher, and I think about when were the best experiences that I had with new curricula. And the worst experiences were when I was sent an email or handed a binder and said good luck. And the best experiences were when I was brought along in the conversation. From the beginning of, is anyone interested in possibly serving in a steering committee leadership role? To, would someone be interested in piloting a program, a curriculum, even just a lesson? Would someone like to attend a workshop to learn more? All of that is done before we even start thinking about really getting our wheels going with actual teaching and implementation. So we might be doing some of that. And for me, that's kind of my model for how we do curriculum adoption. We start with that exploration. We talk to other districts. You know, we're very lucky in Massachusetts. The school districts in Massachusetts, I can't speak for other states, but I can tell you in Massachusetts, school districts are very good about communicating with one another, sharing best practices, sharing wins, and sharing cautions about programs, initiatives, approaches that might not have been as successful. So we'll engage in all of that research. We'll look at actual academic research about different modalities of teaching and learning, and then we'll look at programs. We'll talk to people. We'll go visit people. You know, I go back to that Number Corner experience. We actually sent a team of teachers to another district using it so that they could take a look at it and see if this was something that we wanted to consider. And it's only then, once we've done all that, that we start to bring it into play in the Hopkinton Public Schools.
All right, so let's talk for a minute about curricular change. When you're implementing something new ELA curriculum, Number Corner, it's sometimes challenging to do that because we literally have hundreds of teachers across hundreds of classrooms, and they're busy with kids all day long. And so when you want to make these kinds of changes, the time that we have for professional learning is so limited. So how do you get around that?
Well, a lot of it is prioritizing. We have to make tough decisions about what it is we are going to do. We can't do it all. So we have to make some decisions again about what are the initiatives, what are the programs, what are the shifts in our pedagogy that are going to have the greatest impact on teaching and learning. You know, in Hopkinton, we are lucky in our school calendar that we have some release time where we can gather our teachers together. We did something just last Friday with all of our K-3 educators in one space. Kind of a rarity to be able to do, but it really is great to be able to put everybody in the same space to be able to learn, to share a common experience about what a new approach to teaching social studies might be, and to have everyone together. That's great. We also embed PD throughout our day as well. Our teachers engage in professional learning communities, or PLCs, so that they are able to connect in smaller groups of colleagues and talk about specific topics that are common to the group at hand. At the same time, we are all the time looking for ways to embed PD even in the classroom. So our curriculum leaders might be in the classrooms while teachers are teaching, offering observations, giving feedback, and sharing, this was great, next time it would be even better if. And then our educators are able to take that, use that maybe the next week, maybe the next day, maybe the next period.
Yeah, I always find that when, and this was my experience as a teacher, but I always find that when teachers get something new that they think this is going to make my practice even better, this is good for kids, teachers really gravitate toward it. You know, I think everybody wants to be the very best teacher they can be every single day. So even with limited time, people find ways.
And I do find that people too some people are always in different topics. Some on one topic, someone might be very eager to be the first adopter, the early adopter who gives it a spin. Others might want to stand back from it and say, oh, let me see how that goes. But we see it time and again where we have some early adopters, and if it is a successful thing, all of a sudden others are looking. Because I used to do this as a teacher too. I'd say, can I do that? Can I have one of those? And then all of a sudden, it's spreading. Sometimes it doesn't need to be something that I say do this, but rather a few people have started it, and we've planted some seeds that really can grow.
So I'm curious because every place is a good place. Every place has their own like benefits and their own strengths, and you've been in different places, and now you're in Hopkinton. And I'm curious, just from your perspective, what do you think is either the unique quality or the aspect of the Hopkinton public school systems that you think is really valuable or a real strength of theirs?
Sure. I would say that one thing that I have noticed in my time in Hopkinton is the amount of pride that our educators feel in being identified by themselves as Hopkinton educators. There's an identity there that I would argue is stronger than I've seen in some places, where not just am I an educator, not just am I a fourth grade teacher, but I'm a fourth grade teacher in Hopkinton. And I think that that's a pretty powerful thing. And you can feel it. The community can feel it. Families can feel it. Students can feel it. We as administrators, we see it. We feel it. And that's a wonderful thing, because when you have that sense of pride, you work harder, you think more creatively, you try new things. So that's been a wonderful thing to see. Structurally, you know, I'm an elementary guy by trade, and I have either taught or led in schools that were K5, 5-8, K8. One of the things that I think we have as a strength here in our community is because we are singletons by grade in our different buildings, we have this ability to provide a guaranteed and viable curriculum in a way that is not always possible in a community that might say has 10 elementary schools K to 5. So we know that under one roof, all of our second graders have the same instructional leadership, have the same community and culture in one building. So we know that every single one of our second graders is going to have the opportunity to access the same guaranteed and viable curriculum, so that no matter where they go into third grade, they've had the same second grade experience. That's a great asset.
Go ahead.
No, that is one of the things that I think is so unique about this district. And I think we also pride ourselves a little bit on this idea that in K1 and 2, kids are getting the same thing. But somehow, by the time kids reach graduation, they have found that thing that makes them tick. And we offer it. You know, so I think our high school is super unique that way.
Yeah.
We work really hard to make sure that our students have the foundational skills that they need to be able to make the decisions, the choices that they want. And then we need to support them, and we do support them to be able to make those choices and find the path for them that is what they want. And they might leave the Hopkinton Public Schools still not sure what their calling is, what they are called to do. But they are armed with all of the resources and tools that they need to be able to make that decision, either because they're leaving high school knowing they want to go into the sciences, or they want to go into the arts, or they want to go into a field that might not be something that you would train at a four-year college for.
Yeah. Do you ever think about, like, what you just described is really fascinating? You know, the environment that the school system is in. And do you ever think about, like, how that happens when the expenditure per pupil is extremely middle of the road? It's not like we're spending hundreds of dollars more per student, right? It's very average from what's going on there. And do you ever think about, like, how that happens?
Often. I think Carol and I think about that a lot. We think about how does this magic happen, and it is a lot of thoughtfulness. I could say we're just very lucky, all these types of things, but it's a lot of thoughtfulness. And I will say that now being a member of the central office team and part of Carol's senior leadership team, I see the thoughtfulness that goes into creating the structures that allow for great teaching and learning to take place.
Right.
I always say that when I was a building principal, my job was to make sure that great teaching and learning take place. And I would argue now, in partnership with the superintendent and our other senior leadership team members and our building leaders, our job is to make sure that the structures are in place so that people can make sure great teaching and learning takes place. And that, we're in the midst of our budget process right now. Recently the school committee just approved the FY25 budget proposal. That takes months of work. That takes months of calculations and looking at data to think, how are we going to best lever the resources of the town of Hopkinton to provide the best experience for our students. It's not by accident that it happens. It's a lot of thoughtful work by a lot of very talented and dedicated people.
You know, the reason I asked that question was because the first answer that you gave in this show really resonated with me, because you were talking about how you're working and you're in the central office to support all the teaching in the classrooms. And from the day I experienced a beginning teacher orientation, all the way through now, every single person in that school system has the same objective, you know? And even though you're not in the classroom, you really are. You're like right alongside everybody, and everybody is pulling towards that goal. And I just want to say that's what I see when I look at the school system.
Well, you talk about starting strong right from the beginning. You know, one of my roles is coordinating our mentoring and induction for our entering educators, whether or not they are new to the Hopkinton Public Schools or new to the profession overall. And so we have, every summer, we have a 3-day orientation program where we do just what you're talking about. We share, here are the ideas, the values, the priorities of our district. So as you're starting, whether or not you are a 20-year veteran or this is your very first experience as an educator, you get to learn a little bit about what we stand for and what are our priorities. And so by the time that those educators are entering the classroom for the first time, they might not have all the answers, but they have a foundation of what it is we do as a school system. And Carol and I talk about that a lot. A school district can't just be a collection of schoolhouses. It really needs to be a school system working together. And I talk about that a lot with our educators and with our administrators, especially when we think about our curriculum, what we teach and the instruction, how we teach it. What's the through line, what's the thread, what's the story of the path that a child's going to follow from the time they enter marathon school at 4 or 5 years old until they walk across the stage at graduation from Hopkinton High. That line is something very important, and part of our job as district leaders is to make sure that that path makes sense, that there's connectedness, continuity, and value at every stop along the way.
Yeah, and I would say that's why it's so important to have a really strong administrative team, because whoever the principal is at the Marathon School has to be a great communicator with the person at the Elmwood School and Elmwood with Hopkins, because we have to make sure that there's not only continuity of programming, but consistency of language. So when we're talking about expectations or behaviors with children, right? Whatever language we used at Marathon, we need to use at Elmwood. Whatever methodologies we used in math instruction at Marathon, we have to use at Elmwood. That kind of continuity makes it easier for children to transition and to learn. And so I will say I'm very proud of this group of principals, because they're a wonderful team and good communicators with one another.
Yeah.
We're lucky in that way.
Yeah.
We right now are working on looking at our science, technology, engineering elementary program, K-5, and part of that work has been having our various elementary buildings come together and connect about where are our strengths in that program and where do we have opportunities. And so we've seen a lot of that where our building administrators have shared about what our strengths, where opportunities for growth, and how can we make sure that those connections are super strong.
We sort of talk about that science curriculum and having someone come in to take a look and do an audit to see what science looks like, if it's first grade or third grade or fifth grade. But I'm not sure if the community quite understands that, we have standards from the state of Massachusetts, but we really create our own curriculum. And it's very complicated because you take that standard and then you say, how do I want to embed mathematics? Or how do I want to embed ELA? And would that be reading, or would that be writing, or speaking, or listening? So as you're doing that, the complex nature of creating curriculum, and that really all falls to Mr. Labrad's job. So perhaps my last question before we wrap up is, I think that it's an enormous job, and you know that at one time it was my job.
Yeah.
But you have 13 grade levels. We also have an integrated preschool, and you have all kinds of subject matter, and you want to make sure that the teaching and learning in all of those classrooms is as robust as possible. I know that at the beginning of the show you said when I come in, my day can be a little bit more organized, and that is absolutely true. But I don't think we can discount the enormity of your position. So how has that been, just in terms of thinking about all of those teachers, all of those classrooms, all of those children?
Well, now that you've said it all in one spot, it's a mighty lift, but it's a tremendous honor to be able to influence, support, guide the work of teaching and learning in this school district. We have an amazing team, I think, that can't be shortchanged. I think about our curriculum leaders. I think about the teacher leaders who have stepped up to provide guidance in the different areas across all of our schools. I think about our building leaders who are instructional leaders in a way that I don't know if I've seen in the way that I see in Hopkinton. But like I said, we have a great team of educators. We have a great team of leaders. We have teachers who are leaders. We have leaders who are teachers. And what I find magical about all the work is that at the end of the day, every single person involved in everything we do with teaching and learning keeps the student at the center and thinks, how can I make sure that this student can achieve at the highest level possible, so that school is a joyous part of the day, school is something that is looked forward to, and when the school day and school years are done, there will be a foundation upon which anything will be able to be possible.
And I think that that's what's really important, right? When we were in the classroom, you'd see individual kids and a light bulb would go on, or you'd see them feel success and just feel so powerful as a child. But now our work is like wind erosion. You don't quite sense it while it's happening, but then one day you look and you think, wow, look what has happened here. So, I mean, I think that there's joy all through the entire district. And yeah, and it's nice to have you in our central office now.
I appreciate that. It's a great place to be.
Yeah, thank you for being here and for being on our show today.
Thank you for having me, Jim.
Okay. And thank you for joining us for this episode. And we invite you back for future episodes where we will talk to other interesting people and the things that are happening in the Hopkinton Public Schools. Have a great day.